In this lecture, we'll learn about the Navbar component. The Navbar component functions as a wrapper that positions branding, navigation, and other elements in a responsive header. The Navbar consists of a wrapping nav element with the class Navbar and various content inside. First of all, we can create a brand identity by either adding a heading, a link, an image, or some combination of these elements. For this purpose, we use the class Navbar brand. To see how this works, we'll create an anchor tag with the class Navbar brand. Inside the link, we'll put an image tag with the source being an image from placeholder with the dimensions 40 × 40 pixels and the alt attribute with the value logo. We'll also add the text Navbar. Let's see what it looks like now in the browser. For the Navbar, we can also add a responsive navigation menu, which can be showed and hidden by a toggle button for medium devices and smaller. We will first add our toggle button. We create a button tag with the type button, the classes Navbar toggler and Navbar toggler right, the data toggle attribute with the value collapse, the data target attribute with the value Navbar, the area controls attribute with the value Navbar, the area expanded attribute with the value false, and the area label attribute with the value toggle navigation. Inside this, we add a span tag with the class Navbar toggler icon. Now we'll create our navigation menu. We create a div tag with the classes collapse and Navbar collapse. And the ID Navbar. Inside this, we add an unordered list with the class Navbar nav. Inside this, we add a list item with the class nav item. And inside this, we add an anchor tag with the class nav link. And the text home. We'll now duplicate the list item 3 times and change the text to news, about, and contact. For the first anchor tag, we'll add the class active and create a span tag right after the link text with the class SR only and the text current. This will only show for screen readers and indicate that this is the current page. We'll also add the class disabled for the last anchor tag. Finally, we will add the classes Navbar Lite and Navbar Toggleable MD to get the appropriate styling and responsive behavior. Let's now see this in action. For large devices and larger, we'll see the brand and the navigation menu next to it. If we resize the browser, we'll see that the Navbar hides the navigation menu for medium devices and smaller. It now adds a toggle button which can show and hide the navigation menu. The navigation menu can also be structured as a group of anchor tags in a div. We'll change the UL tag to a div tag and delete all the list items. We'll then add the class navItem to the anchor tags. When we look at it in the browser, we'll see the exact same visual style and behavior. I'll revert the code back to our former example, since I prefer the navigation menu being structured as an unordered list for semantic reasons. We can turn a nav item into a dropdown. Let's see how this is done. We start with adding the class dropdown to the nav item. Then we need to make some changes to the anchor tag inside. We add the class dropdown toggle, the ID Navbar dropdown link, the data toggle attribute with the value dropdown, the area has pop-up attribute with the value true, and the area expanded attribute with the value false. Now we need to create the drop-down menu, which is done by creating a div tag with the class drop-down menu, and the area labeled by attribute with the value navbar drop-down link. Inside this div, we create an anchor tag with the class drop-down item. And the link text history. We duplicate the anchor tag twice and change the link text to employees and awards respectively. When we look at it in the browser, we can now see the drop-down being part of the navbar. The next thing we'll add is an inline form. We'll create a form with the class form_inline. Inside this, we will add an input with the type text, the class form_control, and a placeholder attribute with the value search. Right after it, we'll create a button with the type submit, the classes bgn and bgn success, and the text search. We now see that we have a small inline form in our navbar. We can also have an input group as part of our inline form. This is created by wrapping our input and button in a div tag with the class input group. Then we'll add a span tag in the top with the class input group add-on and the ID hashtag. We'll also add the area described by attribute with the value hashtag to our input. Let's see this in the browser. The last type of content we're able to add to the Navbar component is regular text. This is done by adding a span tag with the class Navbar text and some text. Let's have one more look. The layout and placement of the navbar and its components can be controlled by using container classes, grid classes, and various sizing, spacing, and position utilities. You can learn more about how all of these work in other lectures. The text color can be set by adding the classes navbar light and navbar inverse to the navbar. The background color can be set by adding contextual background color classes. Let's see an example. Finally, we can toggle external content instead of the navigation menu. We will demonstrate this by moving the collapse div above the navbar. We only need to keep the class collapse as well as the ID, which is how the content can be retrieved. We can use whatever content we want, so we will delete all of the current content and add a heading and some text instead. We have now learned how to create a navbar component to position branding, navigation, and other elements in a responsive header. Go on and continue with the coding exercise, which will help you learn the correct structure for this component. In the next lecture, we'll learn about the pagination component.